Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. I'm J.W. Stewart, a veteran broadcaster and journalist with nearly 30 years' experience. I've worked at ESPN and NBC, and now I teach at the University of New Haven.
And I'm Sheahon Zenger. I started my career as a football coach at Drake, Kansas State, South Florida, and Wyoming before becoming the director of athletics at Illinois State University, the University of Kansas, and now the University of New Haven. And this is the Dr. Z and J.W podcast.
And hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast, brought to you by our presenting sponsor, the Pink Clover Foundation. J.W. Stewart alongside our UNH athletic director, Sheahon Zenger. Dr. Z, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, J.W. How about you?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well. We want to thank all of our audience, either watching or listening at home, for joining us today across all of our social media platforms. As always, our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. We're doing things a little differently today because, to be quite honest, things are a little different at UNH and at schools across the United States. The announcement came down a week or so ago, a little less than a week ago, that the Northeast 10 Conference has suspended competition, fall sports and winter sports, if you include basketball, through the end of this year, so through December 31st. So we'll get to that in a moment, but the guest today, in addition to Dr. Z, it'll be our Associate AD, Jon Mays, who's also the executive producer of this podcast, our producer, Broccoli Rob Thompson. His other job, he has many jobs, but his job with regard to UNH is the UNH Director of Development, and then Robin Salters, our Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Women's Administrator. So we'll do a roundtable type of podcast today, which is certainly necessary at this time with everything that's going on. So again, Dr. Z, the decision came down, it was last Thursday afternoon where it was officially announced, the NE10 council president saying that fall sports and winter sports suspended through the end of 2020. What was your reaction when it finally became official?
Well, you can't be in this job and not know that's coming, because when you have a relationship with your president, there's a lot of dialogue going back and forth about what the presidents are thinking and what decisions they're basing what data they're basing their decisions on. And so there's a collective discussion amongst the ADs and the presidents and whatnot. And what I'd want our fan base to know, our student athletes, our coaches, our alumni, our faculty, our staff, our constituency, is that President Kaplan, I'm so, not that it's for him to want me to be proud of him, but we should all be proud of the role he played as a leader in this conference. He asked them to review all the data up to the very last second, to be able to make a decision like this based on the best information possible. And he wanted more, I believe, than any other president to play. And so at the end of the day, for our presidents, and I think most of them wanted to play and to compete, to come to this decision is just the world we're living in today. And some of the things that precipitated this were the Ivy League's decision, and then the Patriot League's decision, and then other Division II conferences around us. And at some point, it just became obvious this was the right thing to do.
Right. So again, if there is such a thing as a difficult decision and a no-brainer at the same time, this is it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are some conferences out there that may still be able to have a limited competition this fall. I can't speak for them. They're in a different universe than we are. And so that's up to them based on the data and the information that they have. But for us and for our brethren like us, this was the best decision based on the health and safety of our student athletes and our staff. Right. Our staff. It's one of those that I think I said to you a day or so ago, I'm not excited about this at all. But if you're an educator at heart, you then pivot and you go, okay, what can I get excited about? And that's what, if we have student athletes watching or their parents, I take off my AD hat and I become a parent. I have 3 children, 2 that are still in college. And, I'm having these same conversations with them at home. And I hope my daughter doesn't watch this, because I'm going to talk about her here in a second. But even last night, we had a very emotional discussion because she's going back to the University of Arizona in a week or so. and she was very emotional about what her senior year may or may not look like. And so it's with that lens that I'm going to talk to you today about what we can expect for our student athletes here at the University of New Haven.
I'm glad you brought that up. And, again, you wear so many different hats, but the most important job you have is a parent, as a father. You're a father of 3. As a father and as a parent speaking to other parents, especially parents of our student athletes, both ones who are returning and student athletes who are thinking about coming to the University of New Haven, what's your message to them, parent to parent?
So here's what I'd say. And I've had all the conversations. I was in a conversation last night with a group of parents who are, I hear students and their parents talking about, maybe I should take a gap year. Maybe I should this or that. And I say this as a parent. There is no way in the world my children are going to take a gap year. This is, the obstacles in front of us. I believe in stoicism in a book called The Obstacle is the Way. Those who persist and those who persevere when you go through tough times will win in the end. And as an athletic director and as a coach, I'll talk about there are winners and there are losers. And in life, I like to reference or Warren Buffett, not Jimmy Buffett. I like to quote them both. But Buffett, is famous for you invest when others don't. And so if others are going to go to the sideline, now is when you double down. My daughter's going back to finish her senior year and get a degree from the University of Arizona and enter the workforce. If she were to say, I'm going to take a gap year, I read or heard recently that could cost you $90,000. And if not your first year out, down the road, that year you waited could cost you that much money in the workplace. I believe as student athletes that by our very nature, we're competitors. And so this is a chance to double down, to use the Warren Buffett model and to go pursue that education. What you have to remember is every student in America is facing this situation. And so if you choose to go to the sideline, whatever that means, go to a lesser institution, take a gap year, go do something else. There's others that are going to take advantage of, whether it be on-campus courses, online courses, a combination thereof. They're moving forward. And that's my message to my own children. My youngest son going back to the University of Kansas, you go move forward. You go get your education. Don't take a gap year. Don't take a gap semester. If anything, take more hours. Advance. Take rank. That's my message to them.
How difficult is it, because you've been a coach and an administrator and an educator for a long time, if a student takes a semester off or a year off and kind of throttles it back, how difficult is it to get the engine going again?
It's been my experience that it's very difficult. And I'll even go a step further. We have found that student athletes get their best grades during the semesters when they're in competition. That doesn't make sense to people because you think, well, they're competing in games, they have practices. There's that old saying, if you want something to get done, give it to a busy person, right? The busier you are, the more engaged you are, the more you get done. I find that the earlier I get up in the morning, the earlier I get started on my tasks at hand, the more that's done by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 6 o'clock that day. No different, as I think about my own children again, and what I would hope for them as they go away to college, I would also say to you, they've spent part of the last 3 months with us. It's been great. The virus has given us back our 3 children for parts of May, June, and July. I've loved every minute of that, but I think they've had enough of us. And whether their schools are going to be in person or in person and online, some kind of hybrid or online, I want them back in their college towns with their roommates, having that social experience that goes with college. I believe that's almost a third, if not a half, if not 2/3 of your education, is socialization with your college age friends and others. Being at home with mom and dad, they've had 18, 20 years of that. That's enough said on that.
Yeah. Again, parent to parent, because parents want to protect their children, right? That's your number one priority in life. You want the best for them, but you want them to be safe. Mm-hmm. What's your message to specifically parents who are a little reticent or reluctant to perhaps send their daughters or sons off to college because they're scared of what might happen because of the coronavirus? What's your reassuring words to them?
Well, as a lifelong educator, I believe in our K through 12 education systems in our country. I believe in higher education systems in our country. And I believe these educators are doing everything they can to provide the safest environment they can and healthiest environment they can for your young people. and for the staff and the faculty that are a part of that world as well. I would tell parents, I tell my wife, we're in agreement that not only are we sending our children back to school to interact socially and to get that education and to compete, but here at the University of New Haven, again, I'm not excited about not having competition, but as an educator, I can get excited about what I'm calling the great sabbatical. This is an individual sabbatical. This is a giant timeout. And this is what you're going to hear from the 3 staff members that are coming on here, my 3 colleagues. We're calling timeout, and we're able to double down on and focus on content that we always try to deliver throughout an academic and an athletic competitive year, but it's hard to do around seasons of competition and even and academic calendars and whatnot. We now have time to put on that educational cap and lens and focus on leadership development, diversity education, career development, and mental health. And, we've talked about our Mental Health Mondays on this podcast many times, so I'm going to let that kind of stand on its own. Our viewers know that that's something we focus a lot on here in UNH Athletics is the mental health of our student athletes to go along with our physical training. And so as we go into this giant off-season sabbatical, we will be doing as much physical training as we can within this health and safety practices that are best, that are given to us by our conference and the NCAA and our local practitioners. At the same time, we're going to guard their mental health to the best of our ability and continue to focus on that. But we're going to leave the mental training to the faculty. And that's why students come to campus, to get that education. We'll focus on the physical training, but we're going to focus on leadership development, career development, and diversity education. Those are the 3 things that we're really, really gonna double down on and try and give the student athletes at UNH an experience like no other place can do. And I really believe in this place, and I believe in what we call experiential education. And I believe we are the university of first opportunities for students whose families have never been to college, and we're also the school of second chances for many people. And so those 2 things together, I believe we owe this experience to our student athletes.
Yep. And just for the student athletes and their parents who are listening and watching, if they didn't see the either email from you or the release from the conference, the sports that are affected in the fall, of course, football, women's volleyball, men's and women's soccer, field hockey, women's tennis, and men's and women's cross country. And no decisions have been made yet about the fall, even though basketball, of course, is affected because basketball would be playing in November and December. So in terms of trying to reschedule fall sports for the spring, no decision's been made on that whatsoever, although it is one of the possibilities being explored. And no decision about the winter and the spring, which seems like a long time down the line, that's a little ways off. That decision, Dr. Z, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that decision is going to come at some point. We don't have to make that decision.
No, we don't. But I'll use the language the conference did, and I know this is really important to President Kaplan. We will strive to do our best to have those seasons of competition this spring. That is the goal.
All right, so no sports. The student athletes do have these opportunities from a leadership perspective. What about practicing and training? What is allowed?
Well, right now, great question. I can't answer that definitively right now until the NCAA adjusts some of its rules pertaining to, and I'll get really out over the skis here in a second, non-championship season sports, which we're about to enter into for all these fall sports. We would have been in the championship season. We're about to go into a non-championship season or out of season. And there's certain parameters that exist for that, things that have to do with 45 days of training, et cetera, that may be amended. So I can't say much more. Again, from UNH's perspective, from the NE10's perspective, we're going to ask for more than we normally would have gotten during this fall. Because a lot of these young people didn't get a lot of training over the summer, and they certainly didn't get to do that in the spring. So that's our chance to give them the opportunity to recoup their skills and get better this fall.
Before we bring out Jon Mays, I have one more question for you. What have the last few days been like for you emotionally?
difficult. I think anytime you're facing telling young people that their world's going to be different and their coaches that they live for this, that their world's going to be different, that's difficult. But I've learned over the last 50 some years to become stoic with regard to, and there's a whole philosophy behind that, a philosophy of stoicism, and made famous by Marcus Aurelius and a few others, Seneca and some others, that I just believe you live daily. And I've tried to take it daily. And what is it that I can do each day to make it a better experience for these young people and for the coaches and for the staff, and and for my own family. And I've never lived more daily. That'd probably be the thing that I've said to a lot of friends lately and colleagues is I think that's one of the ways we're getting through this experience of this virus, this pandemic, is chop it up into individual days and we can get through it. Don't look too far in the future. Don't look with regret in the past. Take it one day at a time.
One day, there it is. There's the coach in you right there. One day, one game at a time. Exactly. Well, let's bring out Jon Mays, and as we bring Jon out from backstage, there's only so much we can control, right? I mean, and a lot of this stuff is out of our control, so we do what we can to control things, and Jon is certainly a big part of that. Jon is the brains behind this podcast. He is, in addition to being our associate AD, he is our executive producer here on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast, which is presented by the Pink Clover Foundation. Jon, we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last several months. You and Dr. Z go way back, but for the benefit of our audience who are actually seeing you for the first time, this is like the Wizard of Oz, like, the parting of the curtain and paying no attention to the man behind the curtain.
J-Dub, I usually sit behind the scenes, behind my computer screen, just waiting, just hoping for you guys to invite me on screen. It finally happened. We're like 3 months into the podcast and it's finally happened.
Yeah.
Well, in full clarity, we may never have brought him on, but in this situation, eventually you're going to see most of the staff. But this was the time to bring Jon out because I brought him here almost a year ago to lead our leadership development program. And, it so often happens, I hired him for that and he ended up doing 20,000 other things. But he has the leadership program moving, but now's the time to really fully implement so many things that we intended to do but weren't able to do till this point.
Yeah, Dr. Z, you and I have spoken about how sometimes the competition, right, football games every Saturday and 2 volleyball games a week and cross-country meets and everything else, sometimes, as much as we love it, gets in the way of all the other things that we want to do, right? So we're both educators at heart, right? We both have our PhDs and we both love kind of the college campus and teaching the next generation. So this time without competition, it is kind of an easy shift for us to look at it as an opportunity, right? As opposed to so many people are looking at the negatives of it. And I think that we can all appreciate those negatives, but so many people can also appreciate the positives and what we can do with this time and how we can now take some of the extra opportunity to teach our student athletes and to grow their leadership abilities. And really, when I talk about growing leadership abilities, it's more just bringing it out of them, right? And having them explore what they are capable of doing. I think that's the biggest thing that any sort of leadership academy, program, whatever you want to call it, it's really just an exploration into what you can do as an individual.
Before JW asked Jon some more specific questions about this program, I'd be remiss if I didn't throw out there, if I were a student athlete or a parent watching this, well, what's Jon bring to the table? Well, not only does he have that PhD, I don't know if this is good or bad. I was on his dissertation committee, and Jon was really one of the most outstanding doctoral students we had, and actually, I believe, received an award to that end. But I'm a little biased about this because it's some of my own path. Jon's an academic. He's a coach, a basketball coach at the college level, and a fundraiser, as he was a lead fundraiser for the state Special Olympics in the state of Illinois. He did all this at once, and he fit what I was looking for to come here and help us toward this end. So I wanted people to know that before you asking more specific questions about the leadership program that he was a part of at my last institution.
Before I get any more into what the actual leadership program is like, I do have to give some credit to you, Dr. Z. It basically is your program, so I can't come on here and act like it's anything that came to me in my sleep one night and I woke up and created some type of leadership program. I was just a disciple of it, really. I learned from you and a couple of your previous staff members that have greatly impacted both of us. So,
well, it really evolved and emerged over the last 17 years, and it hit a crescendo in the last 4 or 5 because we were able to utilize all the research and all the data and all the experiences we'd had for the previous 7, 8, or 9. And the beauty of it now is we can bring it here and keep what we want and discard what we don't. And I really believe that's the beauty of what we're going to be able to do here at UNH.
John, let's talk about the leadership program. First of all, what is it? And second of all, how is it going to help our student athletes when they're not competing on the field, at least for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think, from a competition standpoint, it sharpens your brain to a point where, what we're doing in the classroom, so to speak, right? Like our leadership classroom is designed to get the most out of you on the field of play or on the court or wherever you compete. But it's designed to transfer much, further beyond that, right? Into your career, into your ability as a parent or, as just a member of society. So, like I said earlier, it's about exploring what your capabilities are, what your true talents are, and identifying kind of what it is that you can bring to the table in any given situation. So, there are certain capabilities that some leaders share, but it's really dictating upon what your natural abilities are and what type of either organization or group of people that you're leading. I think that's the biggest thing that you have to identify. It's not a one-size-fits-all type program.
How do you get the leadership out of students? Because some students, tend to be quiet, a little bit more on the quiet side. Other people more on the rah-rah side. So how do you, because we have so many student athletes, how do you figure out who's good at what in terms of leadership? How do you identify that and bring that out of them?
I think it's probably a misconception to think that you have to be loud in order to be a leader, right? So I think that we do have, I was one of them, quiet student athletes who stay to themselves, they're reserved, they're kind of behind the scenes. Sometimes those are the ones who come out of their shell maybe and become a great leader, or they lead in that much more reserved fashion, where it's much more in one-on-one conversations. It's lead by example. I think that there are a lot of different ways to lead. I think that's probably the best message I can convey here is you don't have to fit a mold, right? So if you are someone who doesn't enjoy coming on a podcast per se, or doesn't enjoy getting up in front of a room of 130 football players and giving a speech, you don't have to lead that way. And it's probably best that you don't, because it's not going to fit your style. But if you are someone who fits that mold, then more power to you. So I think, again, it's a little bit of that exploration process of finding your best way to lead, and then kind of enhancing those qualities and bringing them out of you.
I talk about this with my students all the time. Leadership is a big deal in our classroom, right? We're trying to, at the University of New Haven, we always try to teach our students and student athletes to be leaders. A lot of them don't believe they are or can be. My message to them is that we can all be leaders, right? There's always things that we can do, whether we're leaders in our family or our community, our sports teams, college campus, etc. Would you agree with that? That everybody, regardless of who they are, regardless of their background, everybody has the capability to be a leader?
I think you bring up an important point, and probably something that isn't talked about enough. In our society, we make leadership way too big. Right? We make it into kind of this thing that's only for CEOs or for presidents of big organizations or for athletic directors or whoever it might be. Leadership is really meant to be kind of this day-to-day thing that everyone can take part in. And that's how I prefer to actually look at it and teach it. I call it everyday leadership, right? So everyday leadership can be as simple as a conversation between two teammates. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be this big monumental type conversation. It can be very simple stuff, but if you approach each conversation that you have with a leadership mindset, speaking about what your values are and truly what you believe, that's how you can convey leadership and really become a great leader within your team, your organization, the athletic department, the university, whatever it might be.
Jon, this is a topic we've seen trending on Twitter for a little while. It's something I bring up every now and then. The university's brought it up. The question is, why UNH? And that's in a positive way. Why UNH? There are so many choices out there for students, student athletes, and their families. And as Dr. Z said before, well, you can either, there's the possibility of people taking a gap year. We don't think that's the best idea for anybody. But why UNH? Of all the choices out there, why is UNH still the best choice?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I can speak to kind of what we're doing. I think the entire concept of experiential learning is so important. And it's something that we don't just talk about here, we do embody. Dr. Z brought it up earlier. With what we're doing and what we have planned for this upcoming year, in our athletic department, experiential learning kind of occurs naturally, right? So it occurs on the playing field or whatever it might be. We're going to take that a step further and give our student athletes true leadership opportunities, both within our athletic department, across campus, across teams. So often our teams, and this is true of any athletic department, become siloed, right? Volleyball hangs out together and track and field hangs out together. We're going to create cross-team leadership opportunities, and they're going to be able to lead other student athletes, whether it be a freshman leading a senior or vice versa, or a female leading a male, vice versa. We're going to create all those different opportunities that might not have been there in the past. So those are kind of a couple of just real high-level examples of why I believe what we're going to do at UNH this fall semester and will continue to carry forward, why it's a great decision to send someone here to study and to have a meaningful experience. I think it's most important to consider when you're looking at a university, where am I going to grow? Where is my personal growth going to be the greatest? And that's one of our missions, is to make sure that our student athletes, from the day that they first step foot on campus until they graduate and beyond, continue their journey of personal growth.
Well said. Jon, anything you want to add before we transition and let you go backstage? And you don't have to be in the spotlight anymore. We can bring Broccoli Rob out.
I'll go backstage where I belong again. I know you guys like to keep me back there. I appreciate you giving me about 10 minutes of fame or so, but hopefully it's not another 3 months before you invite me back. It'd be great.
Absolutely.
We'll send some snacks back there with you.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for being here, Jon, and thanks for all you do for the podcast. And before we bring Broccoli Rob out, Dr. Z, your thoughts? You've known Jon a long time, and I've known Jon just for a few months, but I'm impressed by certainly who he is, and there's no question his leadership is second to none here. If certainly, as he said, he had a great teacher in you and some of the other people that he's come across in his years of athletics. But what did you take away from his conversation with us that you think is really important for our viewers, our student athletes, prospective student athletes, and their families to really adhere to?
Well, first off, Jon's a great role model for these student athletes, and while he's not young, he's closer to the age of our student athletes than I am, and Rob and Robin, and I think that helps. It wasn't that long ago that he was competing, and he was in the shoes and doing this, and his intellect and his authenticism. He's an authentic individual. That's what I appreciate the most about UNH, and he certainly exemplifies that, as do our next two guests. Where there's no sense of entitlement or excess or ego at the University of New Haven. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. And if you take his message and boil it down, again, if there's parents watching, what I would assure you is we're not focusing on the upper 10% of the bell curve or trying to save the bottom 10% of the bell curve. We're talking about the whole bell curve. And this is one of my own personal missions in life. I'm really concerned about that middle 80%. tongue in cheek, I think it was David Letterman who gave a major gift to his alma mater, Ball State, and somewhere on the building where his name resides, it says something like, "Here to all the average students who came before me and will follow me." That's a tongue-in-cheek joke, but my point is I get really weary of focusing on the upper 10 and bottom 10, and we do focus, but I think our society benefits when we focus on all. And I was telling my daughter that last night. You don't have to be the best at everything. Take the pressure off. And I want to say that to the parents as well. On the one hand, we're going to do everything in our power to help your son or your daughter become the absolute best version of themselves. At the same time, there needs to be a little compassion there in this generation and this time period. So, it's okay to take a deep breath and breathe, and you don't have to push all the time. We're seeing a lot of anxiety and a lot of mental health issues these days with young people because of that approach. And student athletes are at the tip of the spear because from the moment they're born till they get through college, they're the ones who get pushed the hardest. And they're competitive, and we all enjoy that. But that's always something we bear in mind, is to watch out for that other side.
I like what John said about experiential learning, right? Learning by doing. That's what we're all about here at the University of New Haven, and that's what employers want when you can get out. You want to, they want to know that you can do what your degree says you can do. And I also like John's idea of basically the cross-pollination of taking down those silos where, you're going to get football players who are going to interact now with volleyball players and cross-country athletes and soccer athletes who may not get a chance to talk to one another, in a regular year. So I think that'll be a huge benefit for everyone, not just the top 10 and the bottom 10%, but all the 100% of our student athletes.
That's right.
All right, so let's bring out Broccoli Rob Thompson. Unlike John, our viewers and listeners have become accustomed to Broccoli Rob. He's the producer of the Dr. Z and J.W. podcast presented by the Pink Clover Foundation. But Rob wears so many different hats, like many of us do. And with regard to the University of New Haven, Rob, of course, went to UNH, but he is our school's director of development. And Broccoli Rob joins us from backstage. Rob, again, we know who you are, but for the folks who are tuning in and seeing you and hearing you for the first time, please give them a little update on who you are and your long history with the University of New Haven.
Well, I'm a guy that grew up in this area, and I ended up staying close to home to go to school because, as Dr. Z said, this was a place that gave me my second chance, and I took the advantage of it. And took advantage of it in many different ways, from academically to socially. I met my wife here, and of 30 years, and my family were able to come and watch me practice, to watch every game. Little did I know that this would be the blessing of my life and the foundation of my life, and the great people that I met along the way, and the guys and the coaches that all went on to do great, extraordinary things. Not only, to go on and coach and play in the NFL, but, go on to be great entrepreneurs and just great people, and be able to come back all this time later, a lot of us, to be able to support that. But I went out of this place not knowing really what I wanted to do. I was a criminal justice major, but I didn't have a clear path. I took criminal justice because it was kind of the in thing to take back then. And my journey was all over the place, so I found myself later on, and, did coaching for a little while. I was fortunate enough to land a job with the NFL as their director of youth development programs and grassroots globally. And I did that that was the first real job I had, so to speak. And I learned a ton about that. And I just learned about, careers, and careers don't always take the most perfect straight line. There's so many different doors to go through, and where do you fit into that? And I realized for me, it was working with youth and fans and sponsorship. And I started to kind of figure that out along the way. Then I went into the Arena Football League, which then led me to the Walt Disney Company to work on family media with the Radio Disney, Disney Channel, Disney XD, and family-facing programming. Again, kind of fell back into that place. Then I started a business, which we acquired, and I sold that in 2016. There's a lot of crazy stories in between, but that was my journey. And then I ended up coming back after I sold my business, had a little time to come back. And I was very, very fortunate to get the opportunity by our former AD to bring me back to the university. So, yeah, so I'm very grateful to be here and spend more time with my family and friends.
I got to jump in here, and I'm glad Rob gave you that background. Had he had not, I would have made sure he talked about his time in the NFL and Disney and arena football as a general manager, by the way. I mean, this is a pretty illustrious resume. And so we've asked Rob to talk about career development because for our student athletes, he's seen it all. And he is a great conduit for them to look into the future out 5 and 10 years. Who do they want to be and how can they get there? I have this one fun footnote, and that's we call him Broccoli Rob. When we do that, it's a very endearing term given to him by his daughter. For people who are not from around here, Broccoli Rob is a very popular Italian dish made up of Italian sausage and broccolini. And it can be made with sandwiches, pasta, whatever. I'd never heard of it till I came here, and I'm a big Italian sausage fan. And the first time someone served me a bowl of it, I was like, what is this? Well, it's become my favorite sandwich because it's also usually got a ton of garlic and provolone. Okay, it's great. But I just wanted to make sure the folks who are from the New England area, they knew why in the world we were calling this guy Broccoli Rob, and it's spelled R-H-A-B-E. So it's a play on words given to him by his daughter. And we wouldn't do it otherwise, but since it's a family nickname, we like to throw it around.
Thanks, Doctor. I mean, yeah, she calls me Broccoli Rob Thompson. So, you know, as only a daughter can make fun of, you know, dad jokes extraordinaire.
Yeah.
So
Rob, give us John talked about leadership. Give us a sense of what you're doing and how you're going to help our student athletes here. Again, with no sports, there's a lot of things out of their control, but it doesn't mean there are not opportunities. There are opportunities here, and what opportunities are you going to be able to help them with regard to career development?
Yeah, so my first step into mentoring some of our students was in the sport management program to really help them kind of take that next step. I wrote a book a number of years ago called How to Land a Dream Job If Your Dad Doesn't Own the Team, was kind of my story. And I feel like a lot of kids coming out of here have that same situation. I would say 99% of them do, you know. And so the book is based upon the premise of the discovery of you personally, you know, a self-assessment on you, and discovery of where you fit into the industry, understanding that the industry is wide, from college athletics all the way down to the guy that makes the t-shirts, right? Or the woman that runs a sports media agency, or she's an agent, or for pro athletes. They're so wide, and a lot of times, like every industry, a student doesn't really know where they probably fit into that. You know, some careers just are not finite. Like if I'm going to be an attorney, you kind of know, but there's other areas of being an attorney. Same thing with the sports industry. Every single piece of what we do at the University of New Haven, meaning all of our majors, at some way, some form, will touch the sports industry. Doesn't matter. You name it, it's going to some way, whether it's on a vendor side of it, whether it's the media side of it, whether it's the facility side, whether it is the law enforcement side, or whether it's the cybersecurity side, it doesn't matter. So I use sports, the industry of sports, as a way to be a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit more interesting for a 19, 20, 18-year-old or whatever to look at. So what we're going to do with this career development program is going to do a deep dive in and build that foundation, and really build that foundation on you as an individual. What's your story? What's your goals? Is it the goals that you want, or does your parents want? Because in between there, at the end of the day, you're going to do what you want to do, right? Like the rest of us, right? You'll go down that way. So just like esports, you know, to go to college and be an esport major is a hard thing to get by a parent. Why don't you go and learn accounting, right? But they may come on back to esports at some point. What we're saying is it's okay. It's okay to be an accountant, and you should, and understand the financial part of it, or the economic part of it. But you have to figure out how you fit into, if it's going to be the sports industry or just in industry in general. So the key for us is that discovery piece. And it's such a big part of it. And that could be take you your entire freshman year, sophomore year to really figure out where you want. We don't want you to come here and spend the 4 years or whatever you have and then go out like 65% of other students do across the board and not go into the industry that you started. You know, it's not that it's a waste of time, but it's not being efficient with your time, right? And understanding that. So the discovery piece of it, you could pivot along the way. But we're going to use this semester and probably the year to be able to really dive in because, Coach Salters knows coming off, she'll talk about it too. They don't have time. They don't have time to intern, right? They don't have time to do the extra things, to network, to build a resume, to build their immersion into the area that they want to study. Now they're going to have a little bit of time to do that. Right? At the end of the day, we're here to help these kids discover where they want to do for a living and help them ultimately be in the position to be valuable enough to get hired. Period. End of story. That's what parents are sending their kids here for. Right? So if we could build into our programming, our services, and tell that story. I mean, the three of us on this call right now, and actually the four of us, but right here that we're looking at, J.W., ESPN, Z, Division I, Power 5 AD. Tell me anybody else in that conference that has that. It's talent and it's people, right? And that's what it's all about. And that's what we have sitting here. So how do we leverage that? This is what Dr. Z has forced us to do and really think about what are we going to do? What are we going to do with the people that we have, the experience that they have, and then sell that against the experience that these kids are going to have at the University of New Haven, period. End of story. So what we're doing with this career development program is going to be very, very symbolic of that approach. And it's going to be listening and learning and providing them with a self-reflection on how do they do that. Instead of just saying, I want to work in building facilities. Okay, that's great. But did you know about sports technology? Did you know about, programming? Did you know about this? Let's take your skills and fit you into a place and help you create a career path to get there by the time this is all said and done. And I didn't quote Jimmy Buffett. I'm sorry. I was trying to.
Can we do him as the background music on here?
I was trying to loop that
I don't know if we have the money for any of that stuff.
Before we let Rob go, I think the greatest testimony I can give with regard to what I'm asking him to do is this. I had my daughter that I referenced earlier, Abby, reach out to him a couple weeks ago. She's here in Connecticut doing an online internship with ExxonMobil. I'm very proud of her for that. I mean, that's a big-time internship. But as she goes through that, she's having thoughts about what she does and doesn't want to do in life. She's a management information systems major, a double major in entrepreneurship. And she connected with Rob. In one conversation, he was able to say things to her that I, as a parent, can say over and over and over and over again, and it doesn't really register. So I would say that to the parents out there. You've got someone here who's going to lead a program that can get through to them. And she quotes him on a daily basis to me now. I'm like, yeah, I know. Rob said this and Rob said that, but I really, really, really appreciate it. So parents, you have that to look forward to with Rob. You have that to look forward to with John. You have that to look forward to with Robin. I'm very proud of this group. And we have other leaders that they'll interact with as well. But I couldn't, Rob, the way you summarized it, I think you threw you had a mic drop there with that last summary statement.
If I didn't have the mic strapped to my head, I would have dropped it. So
well, I've got mine dangling in the air here, so
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. I could say that it's definitely an opportunity for us to go on offense, which we have, which the president have, which Dr. Z have, and his entire department has going on offense, and not looked at what we don't have. Let's look at what we do have. And I'm fortunate to be a part of it. Next time I'll actually comb my hair before.
Love it.
Thanks, guys.
Rob, thanks a lot, buddy. That's Broccoli Rob Thompson, our show's producer, but also our UNH's director of development, and a great asset to our students and student athletes as a mentor. Dr. Z, you've been a mentor for a long time. It kind of comes with the territory as a coach, as an educator, athletic administrator. Broccoli Rob briefly touched upon it, but I wanted to ask you the same question. When you mentor somebody and that light bulb finally goes off, what's that moment like?
That's why we all unknowingly went into this business. And I've heard Rob say it, and I've heard our other two guests say it. That's you wanting to give back because of what others poured into you. And I can list the coaches. You've heard me talk about who they are, Coach Snyder being at the top of the list, others who've done that for me. These individuals have a huge impact on you. Normally I wouldn't say this, but last night I had a dream about my high school football coach and something he was asking me to do, and I was trying to respond. I'm 54 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I think I was sweating That's had a huge impact on me. And that's what we're trying to supplement around the coaches that these young people are going to come be tutored by. We have these other individuals that will be around their lives and helping them get that experiential education we're talking about. It's not just about coming here to play ball. Yeah, we want you to come here and play ball, run sprints, do whatever it is you do and do it well. First and foremost, get your academic education, but I don't think that's enough. You've got to have the leadership training, you've got to have the career development, and our next piece, you need the diversity education in this world we live in today.
Perfect segue, Dr. Z. It's easy to see you got your master's degree in journalism and media. You've become very good at segueing from person to person. So let's bring out Robin Salters, also a coach as well, and longtime coach. She doesn't like this. She's very modest, so I'll do the bragging for her. But Robin is the all-time winningest coach in UNH history. That's regardless of sport. She won 661 games as our school's women's volleyball coach from 1994 to 2018. She took the Chargers to 23 NCAA Division II tournaments, Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Coach of the Year 7 times. So Robin has a great resume. If that resume wasn't great enough, on top of that, these days she's our Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Women's Administrator, and we're very pleased to have Robin on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast presented by the Pink Clover Foundation. Robin, welcome aboard. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for that glowing introduction. I was, listening to Jon's, and The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite movies, so I was really hoping for a Wizard of Oz introduction. And I don't quite have the nickname of Broccoli Rob, but the intro was great. So thank you very much for having me.
I think Hall of Fame coach satisfies them.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this, I have to say this, both Rob and Robin are in our Hall of Fame here at UNH. To the student athletes and the parents watching this, the incoming student athletes, that's pretty powerful stuff. And my favorite stat I love throwing out there is Robin had one season where she was 42-2. Can you imagine winning 42 games in one season in anything?
Back in the day, we used to play a lot of volleyball.
A lot of volleyball.
Yeah.
I will also brag on her in terms of what she does in terms of our department and the roles and responsibilities she has with us in terms of being in charge of our human resources, our diversity education. She's our liaison to the NE10 and the NCAA, just to name a few things. And so, my world revolves these 3 people that you're seeing and a number of others that you'll meet throughout the year. But in terms of today and the message we're trying to share with the UNH faithful, these are leaders in these categories. And I can't wait for Robin to share with you her vision of this new diversity alliance that she's created. And unfortunately, it's come out of some heart-wrenching circumstances in the last few months. But I pledge to our student athletes and to our institution and our alums and to Robin that it not be something we leave in the background, just throw some statements out there and then forget about it. I'm sure to knead the yeast through the dough every day so that when young people come here, they will come out of here, again, the best version of themselves. And so that's why I've asked Robin to be here today. And as you can tell, she didn't just jump at the opportunity to be on a podcast. She likes to be behind the scenes. But I've dragged her out here to say, Robin, we need to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. It's with the killing of George Floyd, Dr. Z and I had many conversations in the subsequent days. Some of them philosophical, some of them personal, and we talked a lot about how did that happen? Why did that happen? How many more times is this going to happen before real change can occur? And I was thinking about it and thinking about my own life, and I have a son that I worry about in the future, and he's only 11 years old, And so I started thinking about what could I do on our level for our student athletes to improve their experience, to give them an opportunity for their voices to be heard on issues surrounding race and justice and overall equality. And so this sort of came out of my mind while thinking about those things, and calling it the Charger Alliance. And the group is really what I've charged the group with. We had our first Zoom meeting last night. Over 20 student athletes volunteered or nominated either themselves or a teammate and accepted the nomination. And we do think that that number will grow. We didn't go to the coaches specifically because we want them to buy in, to want to be a part of it, want this to be something that they're passionate about. So I presented to them that their charge is basically to have those kinds of conversations, the difficult conversations, the uncomfortable conversations about race, about what's happening on their teams, in their locker rooms, on the bus. And hopefully there aren't conversations. Hopefully that's not happening and our heads are not in the sand. But maybe on the other side of that, what can we do educationally to help move each other forward, move our department forward, and make sure that we are treating all of our student athletes equally, regardless of race, gender, orientation, whatever, because, you know, diversity encompasses all of those different aspects.
Robin, you've been a part of the Charger family for a long time, since the late 1980s. Very much like Rob, you know, has been here, you know, a long time as well as a student going back.
Yeah.
So you've seen it all. You've seen it as a student. You've seen it as a student athlete. You've seen it as a coach. You've seen it as an administrator. And over a prolonged period of time, how is the environment at UNH? Because I know a lot of parents who are watching this, prospective parents who are thinking of sending their students and student athletes here. What is the culture like racially in terms of diversity and gender equity, and how welcoming the place is? What is it like nowadays?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. I looked into some of the numbers in preparing for my meeting yesterday with the student athletes and things like that. And, you know, I've told a lot of people, and actually Dr. Z and I spoke about this yesterday. One of the things, I'm from the Midwest, and one of the things that attracted me to the University of New Haven when I came here as a student athlete many years ago was the diversity of the campus and the cultural as well as racial diversity of the campus and the acceptance of many different cultures at that time. You know, the campus has changed dramatically over the years, and both in aesthetics with the look and number of buildings and things, and the growth in the population from when I was in school, and we were probably about 1,800 students to well over 4,000 now. But what hasn't changed is I do not believe that our commitment to diversity has changed. It's just the population has changed and the students have changed, and how are we tackling those issues as they arise. So I think it's a very welcoming culture. Looking at the numbers, we're about, from Caucasian or white population, we're about 60%, to non-Caucasian white, we're about 36%. So, you know, with some people not reporting in internationals and things like that. So, I mean, it's very reflective of the overall population of the United States. So we do have the diversity that is reflective of the country. And I think that anything that we can do, we have moved forward as an institution with our gender neutral bathrooms policy, with the use of pronouns, in welcoming transgender populations. We have there's a walk every spring, the bystander walk, or upstander walk rather. So there are a number of initiatives that have happened over the last few years with the Idea Council, of which I'm a member of that council. And even with the creation of the new position for Lorenzo Boyd in Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, I believe is the official title. But even just that position that came out of the voices of the students that are finally gaining their voice, which hasn't been much since the 60s and 70s with, you know, protests and things. I think we're at an important time in our culture nationally, as well as within our institution, to really make some positive change. And I'm hoping that on the student athlete side, that the Alliance will provide that platform for our student athletes.
You know, Robin and I have had a lot of conversations about this over time, and she's been a great leader for me and coach for me. And, you know, we're talking about that with Jon. What is leadership? And sometimes leadership's following. knowing when to ask someone else what you know. And Robin's been a tremendous asset and mentor for me in that regard.
Yeah, it's been, it's been really great for me as well. I've been an administrator my entire career at New Haven, 26 years, believe it or not. And but when you're wearing multiple hats as a coach and an administrator, you can't be all in two different areas, and two different very demanding areas, and very demanding in very different ways. And so as I retired from coaching and decided to go all in as an administrator, I looked at it as an opportunity to help be impactful and improve the experience of, rather than 13 student athletes to 13 to 15 on the volleyball team, to upwards of 400 student athletes, through my experiences and what I've gone through, and how I can help them navigate into their future.
Robin, with regard to the Charger Alliance, if you could blue sky it in a perfect world, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to accomplish in a couple of years?
I want it to look like, the student athletes to be running it. I want to sort of just be, the the Wizard of Oz in the background behind the curtain, just handling the administrative piece of it. But I want them to really take hold of it and have their voices be heard. Jon talked about leadership, and the student athletes talked about leadership when they mentioned why they wanted to join. They wanted their voices to be heard. So I want to just be a conduit to provide them that opportunity, and I want them to take this and really run with it and tackle all issues and have input in the policies and procedures that are run in our department, that are have decisions that are impactful to them.
J.W, last night as Robin and I kicked this off, she gave me the honor of welcoming the young people onto the Zoom call last night, and to kind of exemplify what she just referenced that Jon said, at UNH, I asked those young people who want to lead in this area to be leaders on campus with regard to the health and safety, with regard to the other students coming back. We're going to need that. Students of this age, including my own children, lovers of the masks and the hand sanitizer and this and that, but they're learning the hard way that it will spread without it. So we need student athletes. We need the Charter Alliance young people. We need the SAC members, et cetera, to be on campus, being examples of that. This kind of brings us full circle. Your leadership isn't just in one area. It carries over on the field of play, in the classroom, in your personal life, with regard to the Charter Alliance, to career development, to leadership development. You can't separate them. You really can't. This is all part of the whole person concept of kind of the Olympic model, I call it, for student athletes.
So Robin, just to wrap things up with you before we let you go, thank you very much again for your time and being here, and thank you for all you're doing for Charger Nation and the UNH family. For those student athletes, either prospective or otherwise, their parents, now more than ever, why UNH?
That's a very good question. It's a difficult question for me because I've been here for 26 years. I mean, there's something about this place. There's no way I would have told you when I came here at 20 years old, 19 years old, that I would still be here at over 50, There's something about the university. It's the people, it's the community. I tell everybody as we interview folks and walk people around campus, when you're walking around, people know each other by first name. There's no, and Dr. Z spoke about this a little bit earlier, there's no entitlement, one group of student athletes isn't better than another group of student athletes and treated differently. There's just, why UNH is because it's a welcoming environment where you can learn and develop and find your voice and find your way in this very strange and wonderful world. How's that?
That's perfect. I think. Would you agree, Dr. Z? I think that's perfectly said.
It really is. I'd underscore what she said. The people at UNH are real. That's what you find.
Robin Salters, the winningest coach in the history of University of New Haven. I wanted to sneak that in one more time, but more importantly, our Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Women's Administrator and the driving force behind the Charger Alliance. And we wish you the best of luck with that project. I think it's going to be a huge success, and I can't wait to see all our student athletes when they get back to campus embrace that wholeheartedly. And as you just pointed out, they've already started to from the Zoom call last night. So, Robin, thank you for everything. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
You bet. Well, Dr. Z, as we get ready to kind of wrap things up, a lot to unpack today. We covered a lot of territory as we hoped we would. It was great to hear from Robin and Rob Thompson and Jon Mays. All of them kind of come at it from a different angle in terms of leadership and the diversity education and career development. So when you take a look at everything that we did today, all the topics we covered, what are your final thoughts? How do you want to summarize and wrap this show up?
So a couple of things are at the top of my mind right now. One is I'm so proud of the three individuals you just heard from, and I'm excited for others to see who's at the core of our leadership within our own department and who young people get to be around on a daily basis beside our wonderful coaches. I would say, I as I was watching them, it dawned on me, not that I haven't thought of it before, I love athletic administrators who've been student athletes themselves and coaches. And all three of them, me included, that's four of us. Not that everybody has to have that pedigree, but the more of that you have, the more it connects with the student athletes. We know where they've been, we know what the coaches have been through, and it just works. And that just resonated as I was watching them. It reassured me as I watched each of them and thought, wow, this could be a really special time this next semester. I love the term organic. I'm not sitting here trying to direct it has to be this way or this way or this way. These are great leaders. Here's what I'd really like to see happen. Here's what our young people deserve when they get here. And you can see this process is off and running. And, as a parent, if my daughter or my son, the other one's, my oldest son's now out of college, but if any of the three of them were to be going to an institution that offered this opportunity, I'd be really excited. I can only hope that where the two of them who are still in college are going will offer a semblance of this when they get there. And I have no doubt that won't happen, but or that will happen. But I'm sure proud of the people we have here and what I feel they can provide the student athletes who've been here and those who are coming for the first time this next semester.
So again, for those who are watching and may still be up in the air about whether they want to be here or not, or maybe they're a year away from committing to UNH, your final message to them. Why UNH? I'll ask you the same question I asked pretty much everyone else. And we've talked a lot about this on the program, and it can be difficult to summarize, but I think you can do it. Your final pitch, your final conclusion. Why UNH? Especially now at this time in our country's history.
Besides the beach I always talk about?
Yes.
I say that in all truth, that it's a beautiful place to live. And we don't talk about that enough. But in this time in history, I said it already, the people are real. And I can't think of a better phrase. I've been a part of, I tried to add it up the other day as a student, as a coach, as an administrator, I don't know, somewhere around 9 to 12 universities, and love them all. But what differentiates UNH is the lack of entitlement, the lack of ego, the lack of excess, and it's just real. I was sent an article, I think by our men's basketball coach the other day, in one of the major press pieces out there, whether it be Time Magazine or USA Today or something, the city that most represents the nation today is no longer that little suburb out in the middle of America. It's the greater metro area of New Haven. If anyone wants to see this article, I've got it. We can send it out. The diversity within where we live right now represents the overall footprint of the United States. So you take that and you overlay that with the real people here at UNH and the experiential education and the commitment to excellence, and you've got a pretty special place.
Well said. Location, or as they say in real estate, location, location, location. But I agree with you on that. The location, the people, obviously the people set the University of New Haven apart. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it unique. And the opportunities. We've talked about that too. The opportunities, the unique opportunities you're only going to get here at the University of New Haven. I think everyone who's been on the podcast, not only today, but since we started doing this back in April, have voiced their opinions and how special the University of New Haven is and how grateful they are for the opportunities that the university has given them. And certainly I think that stands true for our students and our student athletes.
You know, J.W., when we started this podcast, we wondered who all we would get to come on it and what our purpose would be. And it never fails to amaze me that every week there's another purpose. And we just kind of follow that purpose, that calling of what's next. And as this week evolved, we had some other plans. And you'll be hearing from those individuals in the next. They're equally as important. But for this time, this day, this week, nothing was more important than what you just heard from our three colleagues today.
Agreed. That's one of the great things about doing this podcast is we can go any direction we want. We're very timely and topical. And again, that was the case this week. So we'd like to thank everybody involved with the show. Certainly our presenting sponsor, the Pink Clover Foundation, for all our guests today, Robin Salters, and for Jon Mays and Rob Thompson, and of course for Dr. Z. I'm J.W. Thanks very much for watching the Dr. Z and J.W. podcast. We'll see you next time.